And welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. And thank you for joining us this afternoon or this morning. My name's Todd Berger. I'm the Field Sales Engineer Manager for North America. And we'd like to welcome you to the webinar. And the topic today is the Biamp Electronics paired with Cambridge Sound Masking. So before we begin here, I'll ask that if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, on the right-hand side of the toolbar is a questions box where you can type in your questions, and we'll certainly answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar for you. So feel free to just key any of those things in, and we will get started with our topic today. So a little bit about our agenda. We're going to be talking specifically about two core Biamp products and some accessories that we use with Cambridge Sound Management sound masking systems. Those consist of the Prezone 1 and Mic Pat D, which came from the Apart line, as well as the Prezone 2 with Mic Pat 2, and we'll talk a little bit about the Reveal 1120T amplifier, which in some cases can be used in conjunction with a sound masking system and paging. We're going to discuss a little bit about all-call single zone paging, as well as the ability to do dual zone paging with these systems in conjunction with a sound masking system, and the connections that we need to make between these components with some of the sound masking processors. And then finally, we'll kind of touch at the end on the web interface and accessories. So I will pause here real quickly. I will say that we've had a few audio issues, I think mainly due to the fact that everybody's using GoToWebinar for webinars these days due to the COVID situation. So, you know, if feel free to throw something in the chat or the questions if my audio is kind of breaking up, and we can see if we can fix it for you. So. We'll start with Cambridge as a brand of Biamp, and this is maybe old news to some of you, but maybe new news to others. Cambridge Sound Management, which was a sound masking company, was acquired by Biamp in December of 2018. So now Cambridge is actually a product brand underneath the Biamp, the larger Biamp company, and we continue to be the world leader in sound masking solutions. When this occurred, we formed a building and infrastructure channel. And what that did is it took the traditional sound masking product and paired it with the Biamp Vocia solution to integrate kind of building-wide, large-scale paging applications as well as sound masking. And then we've added some other new products and accessories since the acquisition as well, and a couple of those are what we're going to discuss here with Biamp Electronics. So what you may have seen this logo in the past, Cambridge Sound Management, is actually now Biamp with the product family being Cambridge. And with the Biamp acquisition, we're now a large product brand within alongside Tessera and Lux and Devio crowd mics. We recently acquired Community and Apart, which was exciting. And the latest acquisition is a real exciting technology called Huddle Room Technologies, specifically the Huddle Hub. I'd encourage you, for those of you that play in that Huddle Hub space, to take a look at some of that product because it's pretty exciting. As well as some legacy product, Audia, Nexia, and certainly SageView, our monitoring platform, our software enterprise-wide monitoring platform. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the lay of the land. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Prezone products, like I said, that came from Apart, with the Apart acquisition, and how they can merge into a Cambridge sound masking system to add single microphone paging to a sound masking system. This is real simple, basic PA type office paging, and with these little additions, you can do some kind of cool things that wasn't always possible back when Cambridge was a standalone product. So using some of that synergy between the companies to enhance the capabilities. I'm going to talk specifically about 4 kind of flexible configurations. They're kind of use cases, things that we see frequently in the field when we talk to end users and clients about what their needs are. So hopefully that'll post a few thoughts in your mind as we go through here and where some of these products could be applied. So we're going to talk about the Prezone product, and these are single microphone paging solutions. You can have either a single zone or or what we refer to as all-call paging, or 2-zone solutions. And depending on the product suite that you pick, we can do either or. It also gives us the ability to bring in 4 independent line level music sources, plus some additional microphones. There's priority ducking on board these units, and these are preamps that would sit in front of a traditional sound masking system. Priority ducking of the music sources. When a page is active, the music ducks 30 decibels, and when the page is completed, the music comes back up in level. These are really simplistic front panel operated devices, and I'll show you the front panel and some of the features there. And I mentioned the 4 core configurations, which we'll talk about a little bit. And then kind of as an added bonus, the Prezone 2, which is the 2-zone solution, also features the web interface for the music source, as well as gives you level control. So you can select the music source and level control through a web-enabled device. And these are really designed to be really low-cost solutions. So these are easy adds on top of an existing sound masking system. You'll find pretty reasonable. So what it looks like is the Prezone 1 and the MicPat D there on the left. This is a single zone unit, so all-call paging. You bring the microphone in and the paging can go to any particular sound masking zone that you choose within the sound masking controller, as well as 2-zone paging for the Prezone 2 and MicPat 2. Both of these units interface line level signals into our QT300, our QT600, and our Dynasound 3002, 3008 sound masking processors. So real simple analog connections from point A to point B, works with the 300, 600, and then the Dynasound products as well. On the single zone side, basically we're going to take a single microphone and we can route it to any of the sound masking zones on a single sound masking control processor. So inside of the sound masking control processor, we have matrix mixing, and that gives us the ability to take that microphone signal and send it to any one of the sound masking zones. So you may have it go to zone 1 only, may go to zone 1 and 2, may go to zone 1, 2, and 3 on a QT300, for instance. It also allows us to bring 4 different music sources and also route them alongside the microphone paging. So on the front panel here, there's 4 radio buttons that will let you select 4 different music sources and control that volume independently, and we'll talk a little more about that. As I mentioned, paging overrides the music when it's present, so it's going to detect the paging signal, and when it detects it, it automatically will override the music and duck that music 30 dB. And even though the Prezone 1 is a single zone paging unit, it does have 2 different music buses, and I'll show you an application where hopefully that could come into play for you. So you can kind of leverage both of those music buses and do something, some things kind of interesting. On the 2-zone side, we have the MicPat 2 and the Prezone 2. It uses, again, a single microphone, a single desk station, and it gives us the ability to select 2 different sound masking zones on a single controller. So I can press zone 1 on the microphone and send it to sound masking zone 2, and I can press the second button on the microphone, the desktop microphone controller, and I could send that to sound masking zone 3, for instance. So it gives us the ability to separate those zones and send a separate paging signal to different areas of the facility. You can also do an all-call page with this. By holding both buttons simultaneously on the microphone, you're effectively doing an all-call. So you have zone selectable paging, two zone select, as well as all-call. Again, it gives you the ability to add 4 music sources, and they also can be routed alongside the microphone to any sound masking zone. And once again, just like the Prezone 1, paging signals override the music when they're present. So in a nutshell, that's kind of an overview and the differences between the two systems. So for single zone functionality, what we're really talking about is we're using a single microphone to do an all-call page, and then we have the ability to add music to that all-call page bus. So there are 2 microphone inputs on the Prezone 1. We have separate volume controls for each one of the mics. On the Prezone 1, that is controlled through the front panel. And let me get my little laser pointer here. Right here is the mic level control. There's a gain on the back, but the overall level is on the front. We also have the 4 different music sources. So these, like I said, are radio buttons. So we can select any one of the 4 music sources coming into the system. So we could have a rock channel, country channel, oldies, jazz, on all coming in as music sources into this unit, and you walk up to the front panel and simply select which source you want. You select one music source at a time, but however, there are 2 separate music buses. So these knobs on the front of the Prezone 1 actually control the music level. It's not a master volume control. So you can have a music, although it's the same microphone bus, you can actually have 2 different levels being sent independently to 2 different separate sound masking zones if need be. So with those 2 music sources, you can have different music levels in different areas. And a good example of that may be a lobby where you have visitors coming into an office building. They could have their music source playing at a higher level, for instance, through the sound masking system than in possibly restrooms. So if you had a sound masking zone in restrooms, you could use the second volume control here for music. So some cute little things you can do there. With the Prezone 2, you get dual zone functionality, as we said. So we've got a 2-zone microphone for paging. And what we can do here is we can start to separate where the page is routed from the microphone. So with the Prezone 2, if you can kind of imagine this unit split right down the center into 2 halves, you've got zone 1 on the left and you've got zone 2 on the right. We take the same 4 music sources, and now we can start to send rock and roll to zone 1, and we can send oldies to zone 2, for instance. So now I can start to mix and match music sources, so I can send different music sources to different areas of the building because I have 2 buses. As I said before, with the microphone, we have 2 buttons. Push the button 1, it routes to zone 1 on the preamp. Push button 2, it routes to zone 2 on the preamp. And one of the things I will mention that's a little different on the Prezone 2 is this paging microphone volume control and gain is all on the rear panel, which I'll show you here shortly. The other thing that the Prezone 2 offers is it offers a chime level for the paging microphone. So we can get a ding dong to grab everyone's attention before the page is actually made, and you can control the level of that chime on the rear panel as well. So again, 4 music sources in, have the ability to select them independently per zone, and then we have, again, 2 different music source volumes. So here's my music source volume for zone 1, here's my music source volume for zone 2. There is no master volume control. That's actually handled in the sound masking controller. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the core configurations. And what I did is just called these A, B, C, and D. Configurations A and B are single zone, and configurations C and D are two zone. With configuration A, I have one music source that I can play through the sound masking system at any given time, but I do have 4 sources available. So I could have my 4 different channels or 4 different genres of music, but I can play one of those at a time. What I can do in configuration A is I can do either just an all call page with no music, or I can add music to that all call page, right? It's kind of a one or the other. And how it's done is if I don't have music, if I don't have a music source coming in, I can simply not use that portion of the preamp and just use the microphone preamp to bring the all call page in. If I want to add music to that, I can jack in a music source, select the proper input, and then send it out of one of the 2 outputs. Configuration B works basically the same way, but it leverages that second music output on the Prezone 1. So although the microphone paging is single zone and we have a single music source or a single music channel, if you will, it does give me the ability to do an all call page or an all call page with selected music source choice on every sound masking zone. So I can get into a situation where I'll give you an example here where we're doing sound masking throughout a facility. I want the paging to go to the office area and the corridors, for instance. But I would like to add that same paging with music into a waiting room or a lobby, for instance. So I can pull that off with configuration B because I have 2 different music buses. On one music bus, I would basically turn the music source down and the microphone paging signal would come through the bus. And on the second output, I would mix in the proper amount of music with the microphone and set that up as a separate sound masking zone into the lobby. So you can kind of do some cute things depending on how you configure the thing. So even though you've got a single zone, you can do a little bit of mixing and matching with configuration B. The good news is there's really no difference in the equipment side of things. It's all in the connections, which I'll show you the rear panel here in a few slides. With configuration C, we now move into 2 zones. So we're using a Prezone 2 and a MicPad 2 for that. I have 4 different sources available, but I can do 2 different music sources. So I can start to split these music sources per zone if I choose. With flexibility comes some complexity. And so the functionality that's offered here is I can have zone 1 with paging and a selected music source, and that can go to any sound masking zone. And then I can have zone 2 paging with a selected music source also available on any sound masking zone. So I can start to determine where I'm going to send that microphone by just zoning it out. Alternatively, if I'm not using microphone paging, it gives me a way to bring 2 different unique music sources and make that available to any sound masking zone. Or I may not be interested in music. I may just want the paging. So then I can do a zone 1 page and a zone 2 page, and that could be available to any sound masking zone. And then finally, I can mix and match. So I could have paging only out zone 1, for instance, and then I could have just a music source available on any sound masking zone as well. So that's a good application where you may want just music in the restrooms along with sound masking, but not necessarily want to page into those areas. So you can start to break it up because you've got 2 separate zones and 2 separate buses. The final configuration that we're going to talk about, configuration D, excuse me, leverages the 2 zones once again. So I can have, of the 4 music sources, I can have 2 separate channels, if you will, sent to different areas. And what it gives us the ability to do is, let's say that I have a flex space where I've got a warehouse in the back and the office is in the front of the facility. Most cases, you may want sound masking in the office, and you may want to page into that area separately from a warehouse area where you really don't have a need for sound masking. So with configuration D, we're actually pairing it with an amplifier and 70-volt loudspeakers, and we'll have the second zone serve that warehouse office, or I'm sorry, the warehouse itself, and we'll be able to send a zone 2 page and a music source into the warehouse, but we can cover the office area with sound masking, leverage the same transducers, use the same transducers that we're using for masking, and provide that separate page into the office. So zone 1 can be my office page, and zone 2 can be my warehouse page. And so that's the configure, the fourth configuration, configuration D. All right, so words are great. Let's show you some pictures of what that might look like. We'll take you through each one of these configurations. Configuration A, single zone, as we said. I basically have my microphone running into my preamp. I'm using a single bus out of the preamp into a QT300 in this instance. And then inside the QT300, I matrix mix that source and decide which sound masking zone I'm going to send that signal to. So in this case, my microphone comes in, single bus. I turn it up here. I could add music to it if I chose to. And then inside my sound masking controller, I will take that input, which is input A, and turn it up to only the sound masking areas that I want that paging signal to go to. So just remember, the microphone passes through to each one of these sound masking zones, and then I have the option to add one of these 4 music sources to the bus by selecting it here and then controlling the volume of the music here. So the limitation that you have here is, while I can do masking and all-call paging, I could do all-call paging only because I could have sound masking turned off on this zone inside the QT controller. And I can do masking only by turning this bus off on the 3rd sound masking zone. And I can add a music source to any of the zones that are receiving microphone paging, optionally. So that's the pretty simple version. When I leverage the second bus coming out of the same Prezone 1, microphone goes into both buses or out of both buses in the preamp and comes into 2 separate inputs here on the sound masking processor. So now what I can do is, again, I can have masking available on any zone because that's matrix mixed here in the controller. And then I can add all call paging to each one of these zones as I need. But because I have 2 buses here, I can control the music independently on those buses. So what I can do now is add my music sources. And again, I only get 1 music source played out of the sound masking system, but notice here that I can still have an all call page happening out of a specific sound masking zone, or I can have all call paging with music. A little bit more flexibility because of the dual bus. Front panels on the Prezone 1, as I mentioned earlier, here's the standby button. You have a paging mic level, which is on the front panel on the Prezone 1, paging mic on and off switch. Here's my 4 music sources. I would select one at a time. And then these turn on or off the output buses, right? So bus 1, and let's call it bus 1 and bus 2. And then these are the music volume controls for each one of the music buses. So I can have this set at a separate level than this one if I chose to. Excuse me. On the microphone itself, the microphone is a 2-way toggle. So it has a latching switch. So I could just hit the latch and go hands off and make my page. if I flip it one direction. If I flip it the other direction, it's a momentary. So with momentary switch, just hold push to talk basically. And then, like I said, with all of these controllers, what's happening is we've got a voice activation circuit in there that detects the microphone, and that's what ducks the actual music. What that looks for connections on the rear of the unit. Sorry, this is probably a little bit of an eye chart for you. Hopefully you can see this. We've got the mic pat D. It's going into microphone number 1. And then here are 2 output buses. And if I'm using configuration A, I need to really make this connection to our sound masking processor. So I'm coming out of the zone, what they call zone 1 output, into input A. And then if I want to use configuration B, I simply add the second wire that goes from the second zoned output to input B on the sound masking controller. So very simple connections. I will say that the microphones, these are dynamic microphones. So you can use a 4-conductor twisted pair audio. Notice that 2 of these wires are not connected. They could be connected if you wanted to detect the switch position here. We don't really use that because of the voice activation. And here's where I would set my voice activation level. Got a little high and low shelf EQ and a gain control on that input. So that's the configuration A and B wiring. Again, the only difference between configuration A and B is this connection, this second connection running from the preamp to the QT controller. So let's move into 2 zones and what we can do here. With the 2 zone, we have that ability to do zone 1 paging or zone 2 paging with or without music on each zone. So here again, my microphone is running into my preamp. I have 2 connections from 2 line level connections that are running out of the preamp into the QT sound masking processor. And then we come into our matrix mixer, and what I'm doing is I'm routing what is coming into input A to zone 1 in this case, and then what is coming into input B on the controller is actually being routed to zone 2. And so then I can have zone 1 paging in sound masking zone 1 and zone 2 paging into sound masking zone 2. And here again, we can add masking or take it away from any one of these zones by manipulating the matrix mixer inside the controller. So what is different about configuration C over A and B is now I can start to have different music sources sent to different sound masking zones. So I could have my oldies channel playing into sound masking zone 1, and I could have a rock channel playing into sound masking zone 2 if I chose. So I can simply add those. So this gives you a lot of configurability because we can do just microphone paging, or we can do microphone paging plus music, and then we've got multiple sources that we can select. But you can get basically any combination necessary as long as you keep in mind that the music source is always going to follow the zone page, right? All right. And finally, configuration D. This is the one that I spoke to you about, which is that real warehouse type scenario where you've got an office at the front of a flex space, and then you've got some warehouse or manufacturing where you just want to put some paging into those other areas. So we're going to do 2 zones here, a 2-zone microphone, a 2-zone microphone preamp, the Prezone 2. And for one of the zones, for the zone 2, I'm going to take it right to a 70-volt amplifier, go out to a 70-volt distributed loudspeaker system. And just a note there that we've got a lot of great loudspeakers in the community product line, both ceiling speakers and pendants and outdoor stuff. So there's a lot of different loudspeakers to choose from that you could use there. And then we're taking the other zone of paging from the microphone into the sound masking processor to serve the office area. So now I can get zone 1 paging through the sound masking system, and I get zone 2 paging through the loudspeakers themselves. And again, I can add masking to any of these zones that I want to, or I could just do paging only if I wanted to. That's all set up in the matrix mixer inside the sound masking processor. We'll just pick what we want routed where. All right, then we can add our music sources. Remember, we can take 4 inputs. They can go to different zones. So with that, we have the ability to send a separate music source into the warehouse, for instance, then we send into the office area. So I can have a different music channel there. All right, pretty straightforward stuff. So let's talk about the the Prezone 2. I'll show you the front panel control. And like I said earlier, you can kind of just split this right down the middle. That's probably the easiest way to think about it. I do have 2 microphone preamps here. We don't use them for the paging mic because, again, the paging mic input and gain controls on the rear, but there are 2 additional microphones available for each zone. We do have our music control here for zone 1, and then our source selection, as well as the same thing mirrored on the other side for zone 2. Music level control here, 4 source selections based on line level signals. And like I said, the paging mic for zone 1 and 2 levels, independent by the way, are on the rear as well. I've kept the MSRP pricing in here for you to give you kind of an idea, you know, literally how low cost this stuff can be to add onto the sound masking system. Wiring configuration here. Just know that this is 6 conductors because we do need the control data coming from the microphone contact closures at the microphone preamp here. So you've got an audio, a shielded audio pair coming into the preamp, and then you've got 3 conductors that are selecting between zone 1 and zone 2. I have, let's see, I do have a zone 1 volume control that's independent from zone 2's volume control for the paging microphone. The chimes that I mentioned, the ding dong bell, I can control the level of that on the rear, as well as the microphone gain. All of that stuff sits at the rear. I have 2 zones, 2 outputs. We're going to leverage both of those, and we're going to make an analog connection from zone 1 out to input A, and zone 2 out to input B to get from the preamp into our QT300 and QT600 controller. So again, real simple, easy add. Configuration D, the only change here is we take this second zone output, and instead of running it to our sound masking controller, we're just going to take it and run it to a 70 volt amplifier. We've got the little Revamp 1120T, that's 120 watt 70 volt amplifier, single channel, and then we'll go out to our loudspeakers, to our 70 volt line from there. So now I can page the warehouse through the amplifier, and I can page the office through the sound masking system. Okay, sorry, get my cursor back. So on the Prezone 2, I did want to touch on the fact that this is a web-enabled device. If I go back a slide, you notice that I do have an Ethernet connection on the Prezone 2. This is only on the Prezone 2, not the Prezone 1. So what it gives me the ability to do is I can connect to the IP or host name of the device and go in, and I can now control my 4 different music sources, right? As well as mic A and B. So mic A and B, remember, are on the front panel of the Prezone 2. They're not the paging mic. But if you did have additional microphones, maybe a wireless microphone or something jacked into the unit, you could control the mic level here on the front. The same mic level that you control on the front would be controlled through the web GUI. So you select your music source here, control the volume level. You can do a mute here as well, and then control the 2 front panel controlled microphones on the Prezone 2. So any web-enabled device with a browser in it, obviously, phone, tablet, certainly a PC, if you want to put it on the network, you do that. You can also go in and set up the system info and do some customization. If you would notice, if I go back here, this says CD, tuner, iPad, iPhone. All of those labels are customizable as well. So I can go in and label all of those sources, give them any specific name that I want to, logical name. Same thing with the microphones, and then the two zones. So if I was using configuration D, we would probably make this one office, and zone 2 we would make warehouse, for instance. So very simple to do. Set the IP address and set the host name up if you want to get to it with DNS and connect it that way. And then you can also set volume limits, right? So you can kind of help keep some of your end users out of trouble by setting the max level for those microphones, and then for the sources as well. Password protected, obviously. So you can require them to log in to get to the box if needed. All right, let's see how we're doing on time. We're doing pretty good. So we'll just kind of wrap it up here. So the intent of this is really to add simplistic microphone paging to a sound masking system. You can certainly do that. It's probably best to think of these systems in the context of where I've got a single controller and I need either 1 or 2 zones of microphone paging. And that's probably the way to do it. When you get into large multi-floor type situations where you've got a lot of zones and a lot of page codes and a lot of things happening on, you need more routing capability or more sound masking controllers. Certainly take a look at our Vocia product line because it can interface with sound masking very much the same way. It gives us the ability to do a lot more, right? So these systems will work with our Dynasound offerings, both the network solution as well as our 70-volt system, along with our QT 300s and 600s. So we have some pretty good flexibility there. It's really designed for single zone all-call paging, plus single music selection, or dual zone, zoned paging, plus dual music selection. The music and the paging levels can be controlled independently, and the music will be ducked for clarity during a page. I put a little note here on this presentation because it's a question that we get quite frequently about ducking sound masking during a page. And it's never a good idea to do that for a couple reasons. Ideally, sound masking is a background ambient source. So we want that to remain very consistent. And when you duck sound masking during a page, you're taking the sound masking and you're turning it down a level, probably to the point where it's inaudible, and then it comes back. Well, when it comes back, that's when people realize that they're in a masked environment, something you typically don't want with building occupants. So you never really want to duck sound masking. The paging signal and the music signals will sit on top of the sound masking signals, so they're mixed together. And you've got enough signal to noise ratio there because the sound masking is turned down at such a low level that you've got really good clarity through the paging system. You've got a good signal to noise ratio between the page or music and the sound masking. So there's really not even a reason to do it, to tell you the truth. In the dual zone system, we can also serve those non-sound masked areas with 70-volt loudspeakers from both apart and community. There's a lot of choices out there, from surface mounts, dependent mounts, ceiling speakers, outdoor rated stuff. There's a lot of great options there. And again, we'll never duck sound masking, but we will duck the music source when we have a page for clarity. Just some additional considerations here. I did want to touch on an accessory to these Biamp Electronics called the DIWAC, Digital Interfaced Wall Audio Control is what it stands for. And what it allows us to do on a Prezone 2 is it takes that source selection and that volume control, and we can put it out into the space for end user control. So that's a 2-wire connection that runs from this wall panel back to the Prezone 2, and you would have one of these DIWAC units for every zone. So if you have music on both Zone 1 and Zone 2, I could put one again in the office and then put another one in the warehouse, for instance. And then they could select their music channel as well as control the volume. So there are wall music source level controls available for the Prezone 2 model. It's $174 MSRP, relatively low cost. I did want to mention that the DIWAC is only controlling those music sources coming in currently. It does not control the microphone levels. And then the last thing worth noting here is if you do put this on the network, DHCP is required for network connectivity of the Prezone 2 currently. We currently don't support static IPs in the Prezone 2. That could change in the future, but as it currently stands, just know that you'll need DHCP if you're going to throw it on a network. All right, I think that is pretty much, that's everything that we had today. We greatly appreciate you attending today. We appreciate your business, and stay safe out there.